I stood on the courthouse steps and made a call that completely paralyzed my ex-husband's family. I called my dad and said, "Fire them. Fire all 27 employees my mother-in-law secretly planted in our company." Thank God I did, because that exact same evening, my former mother-in-law burst into my home screaming, demanding that I undo it. For 5 years, she and her son had treated my dad's logistics empire like an open vault, quietly replacing our loyal staff with their own family members and corporate spies to orchestrate a hostile takeover from within. They thought their shadow coup was flawless. But they didn't realize that my compliance during the marriage was just a stall tactic. By the time they realized the trap had sprung, they weren't just losing their jobs, they were facing total financial ruin. My name is Rachel Vance, and at 36 years old, I am the vice president and sole heir to my father's multi-million-dollar corporate logistics company. I spent my entire life learning the ropes of this empire, earning every ounce of respect from our workforce. 5 years ago, I married Julian, a man who seemed charmingly supportive but lacked any real drive. Along with Julian came his fiercely overbearing mother, Lydia. Early in our marriage, Lydia weaponized my desire to be a supportive daughter-in-law. She would regularly bring up struggling family friends or brilliant, underappreciated distant relatives who desperately needed a break. Wanting to foster family harmony, I bypassed our strict corporate hiring protocols to give her recommended candidates entry-level positions. I thought I was simply doing a good deed for my new family. Have you ever helped a family member secure a job only to have it completely backfire on you? Tell me your story in the so minor that they barely registered on our corporate radar. But over the next 2 years, subtle operational shifts began damaging our efficiency. Our usually flawless data communication between branches became clunky, strange billing anomalies started popping up in our weekly audits, and we experienced a sudden, uncharacteristic drop-off in major client retention. Customers who had been loyal to my father's company for a decade were suddenly breaking contracts and fleeing to a mysterious new competitor. Determined to find the leak, I launched a quiet, internal organizational review, bypassing our regular management. When the tracking results finally landed on my desk, my blood ran absolutely cold. I discovered a hidden subnetwork of exactly 27 employees, all tightly interconnected by blood, marriage, or deep personal history to my mother-in-law, Lydia. This wasn't just a case of innocent nepotism or helping out a few family members. These 27 plants hadn't just been dropped into entry-level warehouse positions where they could do minimal damage. Instead, they had been strategically and meticulously distributed across our most critical, sensitive corporate veins: accounting, fleet management, information technology, and client relations. They had successfully infiltrated our entire operational nervous system, quietly holding the keys to our database, our proprietary logistics routes, and our private financial records. Without my father or me ever noticing, my husband's family had built a shadow army right under our noses, completely ready to strike. The moment the full realization of their infiltration hit me, I confronted Julian in the privacy of our home. I laid out the organizational charts, showing him the massive conflict of interest and demanding to know why 27 members of his extended circle were occupying our critical infrastructure while our company's efficiency plummeted. But instead of providing answers, Julian immediately pivoted to toxic manipulation and intense gaslighting. He slammed his hands on the counter, mockingly accusing me of being a paranoid, elitist snob who was tracking his family simply because I looked down on his humble background. He made me feel like I was losing my mind, weaponizing my love for him to protect his mother's secret agents. The true chilling warning, however, came 3 days later during a casual family dinner at Lydia's house. As she poured wine, she looked me dead in the eye and dropped her sweet facade. She subtly dropped a warning shot, hinting that she knew I had been digging into the corporate roster. Lydia softly implied that if any of her family friends or relatives were mistreated or targeted at the office, Julian would instantly walk away from our marriage. She made it painfully clear that they would slap my father's empire with a highly public, destructive asset division lawsuit, claiming Julian was entitled to half the company's valuation. They were using my marriage as a shield and corporate blackmail as a weapon, fully confident that I would stay silent to protect my family's legacy from public ruin. Refusing to back down under their intense pressure, I decided to play along while secretly initiating a deep digital dive into our company's internal servers. Over the next month, I personally monitored encrypted server logs, accessed timestamps, and proprietary data tracking to see exactly what those 27 employees were doing during their working hours. What I uncovered was a level of corporate betrayal so deep it completely shattered any remaining hope I had for my marriage. The IT and accounting moles weren't just bad at their jobs. They were actively and systematically copying our highly guarded, proprietary client lists, secure routing logistics maps, and sensitive pricing algorithms. Even worse, the financial tracking data showed they were quietly siphoning company funds through inflated, fabricated vendor invoices, routing the stolen capital directly into a brand new, private shell enterprise. When I ran a corporate registry search on that competing entity, the owners listed were none other than Lydia and Julian. The shattering realization finally hit me like a physical blow. Future together. It was a cold, calculated corporate trap from day one. Julian and his mother had never viewed me as a wife or a partner. They simply saw me as an entry point into my father's multi-million-dollar empire, waiting patiently for him to retire or pass away so their shadow army could completely cannibalize his life's work from the inside out. Armed with this devastating proof, I knew I couldn't just get mad. I had to get completely even and ensure they never saw it coming. Instead of exploding in rage or confronting Julian with the evidence, I forced myself to maintain absolute restraint. For 6 agonizing months, I played the part of the submissive, oblivious wife perfectly. I smiled across the dinner table, listened to Lydia brag about her relatives' hard work, and pretended everything was completely normal. In reality, every single day was a calculated countdown. Behind the scenes, I was secretly coordinating with a high-stakes corporate divorce attorney and my father, building an ironclad defense strategy. We knew we couldn't just fire the 27 plants immediately. If I had terminated them while the marriage was functioning normally, Julian's legal team would have immediately claimed a malicious disruption of joint marital assets. They would have used that to freeze our operations and secure a massive, multi-million-dollar divorce payout based on an inflated valuation of the company. We had to wait until the exact moment of legal separation to pull the trigger. My father and I spent those months quietly building legal fortifications around the empire. We documented every single instance of data theft, every copied client list, and every fraudulent invoice siphoned by Lydia's network. We compiled thousands of pages of irrefutable digital forensics. Our goal was to create an airtight corporate espionage case that would completely void any marital property claims Julian tried to make. We were quietly building a legal cage around them, waiting for the perfect day to lock the door. The day of the final courtroom hearing arrived, and the atmosphere was thick with tension. Julian and Lydia sat on their side of the aisle, wearing smug, confident smiles. They truly believed that even if the marriage dissolved, their shadow network inside our infrastructure would ensure they held all the power. They thought they had outsmarted me, expecting a massive asset payout and a permanent stake in my father's empire. But the moment the judge's pen left the paper and the divorce was finalized, their smiles vanished into thin air. I walked out to the courthouse steps, pulled out my phone, and made the call to my dad. It was the signal we had spent months preparing for. Instantly, our IT department initiated a pre-planned, company-wide security lockdown. Within exactly 15 minutes, all 27 plants had their digital credentials completely wiped, their access keys deactivated, and their corporate emails deleted. Private security teams, which we had quietly stationed at every branch, walked onto the office floors and publicly escorted every single one of them out of the buildings in front of their coworkers. That exact same evening, the fallout hit my private home. The front door practically rattled off its hinges as Lydia and a frantic, pale-faced Julian stormed inside, screaming about illegal termination and threatening to sue us for everything we were worth. I didn't say a word. I simply turned on my tablet and displayed the massive mountain of evidence detailing their corporate espionage, data theft, and fraudulent invoices. The room went completely dead silent as they realized they weren't just fired, they were completely trapped. 3 months after signing those final papers, the dust has finally settled. The grand shell company Lydia and Julian built collapsed instantly without our siphon data, and both face severe industry blacklisting alongside impending legal penalties for corporate theft. My father and I have completely rebuilt our business with fully vetted, loyal staff who actually care about the company. As for me, shedding that toxic marriage allowed me to finally step into my full power as a leader. I learned that real partners don't build shadow armies against your life's work, and true freedom is knowing exactly who you can trust. Would you have had the patience to wait 6 months to execute a perfect trap? Or would you have fired them the second city you're watching from? So I can see how far my story has reached. And meanwhile, I'm leaving 2 other incredible stories on the screen right